State Review Board for Historic Sites is being conducted in accordance with the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law. In keeping with the requirements of the law, the Historic Preservation Office submitted written notification to 3 newspapers on June 13th, 2024. The Historic Preservation Office also gave adequate notice to all other parties concerned in conformance with the national regulations at 36 CFR 60 and with the New Jersey Register regulations at NJAC 7:4.
Thank you. Welcome and introduction. My name is Kate Ogden, and as chair of the New Jersey State Review Board for Historic Sites, I would like to welcome you to our July 18, 2024 meeting. This meeting is being held via Microsoft Teams and is being recorded. We have a chair script, which I'm reading now. This board meeting is the end of a process of considerable research and consultation with the New Jersey State Historic Preservation Office. The only responsibility of this board is to comment on the historic significance and integrity of the historic property, as demonstrated by the nomination under discussion. We are not allowed to consider or comment on other matters. If at the end of deliberation it is determined that a nomination is eligible for listing on the New Jersey and National Registers of Historic Places, the board will make a recommendation to the Assistant Commissioner of Community Investment and Economic Revitalization of the Department of Environmental Protection, who has the final decision on whether to sign the nomination. Our decision is advisory only. Upon receiving a favorable signature, the property or district is simultaneously listed on the New Jersey Register of Historic Places and is recommended for listing on the National Register. As a general reference, the following information is provided for the public concerning the State Review Board and their meetings. First, it is generally the responsibility of the Historic Preservation Office, the HPO, as staff to the board to provide technical guidance and professional recommendations considering nominations before the board. When a professional consultant has prepared a nomination, the HPO usually extends a courtesy to permit that consultant to make the presentation. However, HPO reserves the right to present nominations to the board directly. All public comment will be limited to the public comment portion of the meeting as directed by the chair. During the board's deliberation on the merits of a resource and during the voting of a motion, public input will be restricted to answering specific questions of a member of the board. The board has general guidelines that they ask applicants and members of the board to follow. As the board is limited to evaluating historic properties in terms of the national and state register criteria, they ask that both the presenter and the public restrict their comments to the criteria and to the significance and integrity of the property or properties in question. Please note that board jurisdiction is limited to whether the property being proposed for listing meets the criteria for evaluation. Once the presenter has made a presentation by summarizing the property's significance and eligibility in terms of the criteria, the board will question the presenter. After these questions, the chair will solicit public comment. Public comments must relate to matters that the board is empowered to consider and should only include new material that is not included in the nomination and which was not part of the presentation to the board. It is important that anyone presenting new information must be able to document the new information. The board is likely to ask for the source of the new information. Organizations will have the opportunity for 2 spokespersons who may speak up to 3 minutes each. Unaffiliated private citizens may also speak up to 3 minutes each. The chair reserves the right to limit presentations and comments as required by the press of business, which today is somewhat heavy. Here are a few additional ground rules for today's State Review Board meeting, considering our virtual format. The audio and video of this meeting are being recorded and minutes are being taken. Everyone except the board members and the person presenting or talking to the board should have their camera switched off. Everyone except the board members and the person presenting or talking to the board will be muted. Any members of the public attending this meeting who wish to provide comments to the board should indicate they would like to comment using the chat box at the top right of the screen. Historic Preservation Office staff will be monitoring the chat box and will let me know if anyone would like to provide public comment when we get to that part of the agenda. After we see if there are members of the public wishing to express comments via the chat box, we will be asking if anyone participating by phone would like to provide public comment. The board has received copies of the nominations in advance and has had the opportunity to review them thoroughly. Nominations have also been available on the Historic Preservation Office website for public access. If, however, you would like to receive a copy of any documents being discussed today, please use the chat function to request a copy and include your email address. Documents will be emailed to you. If you are participating by telephone and would like to receive a copy of any of these documents, please send an email to njhpo@dep.nj.gov. If you didn't catch that, someone can respond in the chat to you. Request a copy that way by email, and one will be emailed to you. Because documents were previously made available, presentation of individual properties will be limited to 5 minutes, and historic districts will be limited to 10 minutes. Historic Preservation Office staff will be timing presentations and will be enforcing this policy. If you are participating by phone, would you please now state your name and affiliation so that it can be added to the meeting minutes? Anyone participating only by phone? For a change, I'm getting 2 screens, so I go back and forth between the 2 screens. I didn't hear anyone. Hello? Someone?
I don't believe we have anyone participating by phone.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. Depending on,
we do have someone who's participating in together mode, and we'd like them to identify themselves for the purposes of the minutes and put it in the chat if you'd like.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Bond, and I'm calling in about the historic bridges in Delaware Township. I live in Delaware Township. Say, can you hear me? Can somebody hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you loud and clear.
Thank you.
You got the name, Andrea?
I'm being told that sometimes that together mode just kind of spontaneously appears and that it may not actually be a participant. So let's just proceed.
I also saw a message flash up from Bob Craig, who cannot hear. Bob, are the speakers on your computer up? It might or might not be a Teams issue. It might be your local computer. I don't think Bob is muted. Can you hear us? Bob, can you hear us?
Try the chat.
That is okay. I know he has chat open because can you hear now? Yes. Okay, great. Glad you're with us again. Thank you. Andrea, you have everyone you need? Names?
Yes, ma'am.
There's one last item in the chair script. Depending on the pace of the meeting, and so this is an important one, we may need to take a break at some point and may take a lunch break, perhaps around noon or 1, depending on how things are going. Andrea, back to you for roll call.
David Abramson,
Here.
Michael Sharapa,
Here.
Janet Foster,
Here. Can you
John
hear me?
Gomez. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And John Gomez was planning to be absent. Kathleen John Older.
I see her. Kathleen? Uh-oh. Did we lose Kathleen? Oh,
I'll come back. Greg
I
Latanzi,
do see
Here.
her.
Michael Mills is absent. Kate Ogden,
Here.
Anthony Piniello,
Here.
Michael Siegel,
Here.
Hetty Williams.
Here.
Kathleen, do you have Oh, okay, great, perfect, thank you. Okay, so we have quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there opening announcements?
No opening announcements, Madam Chair.
Okay. Our next action item is approval of the minutes from our March 2024 meeting. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes? And if so, are there any proposed changes or updates?
I would move, this is Janet. I would move that we accept the minutes with extreme thanks to Catherine Dubati, who managed to get our very complex discussion about Cape May in very good order. And I'm so grateful because I know that's hard to do. Thank you, Catherine.
And I heartily second the motion.
Do we vote it, Andrea?
Yep.
Okay.
Dave Abramson,
Yes.
Michael Sharapa,
Yes.
Janet Foster,
Yes.
Kathleen John Alder, Gregory Latanzi,
Yes.
Kate Ogden,
Yes.
Anthony Piniello,
Yes.
Michael Siegel,
Yes.
Hetty Williams.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Review of nominations. The purpose of the next part of the meeting is to discuss each nomination and to vote on whether each nomination meets National Register criteria. I remind members to please state your name when making or seconding a motion. Any board member who has an interest, personal or professional, in the property or who would benefit from its listing should declare her intent and excuse themselves from the meeting for the duration of the discussion of that nomination. The discussion of each nomination will be concluded with a motion and a voice vote as to whether it is approved or rejected. I believe there's no old business, correct, Andrea?
Correct.
So new business. The consent list is a list of nominations that are so well prepared and clearly argued that there is no need for discussion or any emendations. Only nominations of individual properties can be placed on the consent list. Historic district nominations must always be presented in full. The board will view the slides for consent list nominations because we like to see the pictures, but there will be no accompanying verbal presentation and there will be no discussion. The board must vote unanimously to place an item on the consent list. Would anyone like to move to place any of today's nominations on the consent list? Motions to be followed by a second and a vote. In this case, if there are any votes against, the nomination cannot be put on the consent list. The question was, did anyone want to place anything on the list? I don't hear a response, so we're going to move ahead. The HPO staff has forwarded a request to reorder the Tewksbury Bridge nominations. The bridges were listed in alphabetical order on the agenda. However, the preparer has asked to present them as follows: Sandbrook Headquarters Road Stone Arch Bridge, then Yard Road Stone Arch Bridge, 3rd Federal Twist Road Stone Arch Bridge, 4th Buchanan Road Bridge, and 5th Coldwater Bridge. And I didn't check if the agenda uses that order. Andrea, does it? I'm sorry.
No, the agenda is as published in alphabetical order. This would be your chair prerogative to change the order for the purposes of the meeting.
Right. And I think I told you that I would allow it. It's just going to confuse me going back and forth a little bit. Are there any
I
objections?
changed the order in your script.
Thank you. Are there any objections from fellow board members? Hearing none, I exercise this prerogative as chair to reorder the agenda. So our first item will be the Cress Holmes House Historic District, Middle Township, Cape May County. Does anyone need to recuse? I don't hear anyone. Who is presenting this, Andrea?
Joan Berkey, the preparer, will be presenting.
Of course.
Of course. I need to share my screen, and I'm so clueless how to do that. So you're going to have to walk me through it, please.
So
I see a share button. Is that what I hit?
Yep.
Okay. And I do want presenter mode. So how do I make that happen? This one? Can everybody see that?
Looks perfect to me.
Oh, good. Yes, everybody can see it, and you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great.
Yes.
Then I'm going to get started here. Let me pull up the part that shows me the notes here. All right, Cressy, and it's pronounced Cressy, Cressy Holmes House Historic District, Middle Township, Cape May County. Oops. We have, we have significance under criterion C 4 different ways. First, the district is locally significant for its collection of historic farm-related buildings, of which few in the county have survived as an intact grouping into the 21st century. The house's circa 1830 main block is locally significant as one of the best preserved examples of federal architecture in the county. The circa 1704 rear kitchenelle is locally significant as a well-preserved example of first period heavy timber framing. And the last but not least, the circa 1855 gravel brick storage building is of statewide significance as a variant of gravel wall construction promoted in the mid-1800s, but never built in great numbers. It is one of 11 known extant structures in the state, of which 2 are in Cape May County. The period of significance runs from circa 1704, that's the approximate construction date of the rear L, to circa 1855, the approximate construction date of the gravel brick storage building. This nomination updates the original nomination submitted in 1979 under the name of the John Holmes House, providing additional documentation and increasing the boundary to include the family cemetery. Actually, my research uncovered that John Holmes did not build this house, as previously supposed, so that's why it has a new name. This shows the original district boundaries. We've kept those. And we've added the family cemetery, which is about 110 feet south of the original boundary. And that's what bumped this up to being a historic district. Now, there have been some changes to the resource count since the nomination was written, and I was recently informed that Kinney Clark determined that all resources extant in 1979, and that would be the house, the barn, the mile marker, the greenhouse, the privy, and the circa 1855 storage building that were within the original boundaries should be considered as having been counted as resources in the original nomination. I claimed only the house was counted because it was the only one described in section 7. So this changes the resource number count on page 2 of the 4-page nomination form. It also changes the number count on page 2 of section 7 and the wording on page 1 of section 7, the 3rd paragraph. So those changes will be made after the meeting today. Let's have a look at the contributing buildings, the site, and the object. This is a view of the setting looking north up US Route 9. You see the house to the right. Property across the street is owned by the county, and the zoo is on a big chunk of it. Here is the house. The main block was built about 1830, the rear kitchenelle about 1704. Just south of the main block is a one-story office built about 1860, and this one-story stone garage dates to 1969. Here's a Habs photo, 1937. It shows the one-story office building as 2 stories, but that was actually a parapet roof that mimicked a 2nd story. You can see the house retains a great deal of integrity from its appearance in 1937. Here's the magnificent front door with its carving. This view shows the circa 1704 kitchenelle. Very typical fenestration pattern for Cape May County. Center door on the 1st floor, flanked by 2 windows, 2 more on the 2nd floor. And this view shows the garage and the back of the house. Also the 1962 rear porch. Here is almost the same view done by Habs, and it shows that very evident parapet roof. Let's go inside. This is the circa 1704 kitchen. The panels and mantel are from the circa 1695 section of the Hand Holmes house, which is located about 1 mile to the southwest. So it's historically appropriate, just not original to the house, to this section anyway. There's only a single chamber on the 2nd floor. The joists are beaded. We have a lot of original beaded paneling on that fireplace wall. The floors up here are original, and much of the trim, the doors are. Now, when I peeked inside the closet, that's when I really noticed that this was a 1st period building. It has exposed framing members consisting of the flared and beaded corner post and the beaded side girt. Now we're back in the circa 1830 section. This is the entry hall in the main block, and I gave a close-up of the stairs. The stair ends are beautifully carved quarter sunbursts. This is the parlor looking towards the 1-story office. And here is a close-up of the carving on the mantel. It's beautiful. This is the dining room in the circa 1830 main block, and you can see the kitchen section through the doorway there. The mantels here have the same form, but they are not carved, so they're a lot less decorative. We go upstairs. This is the north chamber. Again, the mantel has no carving on it. This room has been interpreted in the Victorian style. And the south chamber has had its mantel replaced in the early 20th century. I do not know why. The attic has a colonial era door with HL hinges. Actually, there's 2 of them up in the attic, which has been finished, which are possibly from the earlier John Holmes house that was located across the street. They're certainly out of place in the circa 1830 main block. This is the interior of the circa 1860 office that was built by Richard Holmes. The house is being used as a house museum, and this is one of the medical displays. The garage was converted to accommodate the stenciled parlor from the circa 1810 Silas and Joanna Matthews house that was located in Lower Township. It's the only example of stenciled walls that we have in Cape May County. And the mantel here is actually beautiful too. I have no idea who carved it. Now we're going to look at some of the exterior buildings. This is the barn. It's considered key contributing. Was moved to the site around 1970. The red line represents the original circa 1803 section. We know that from dendrochronology. Yellow represents the circa 1820 edition, and blue is the circa 1850 edition. This is the view southwest of the rear elevation. There's a 1989 rear addition, and behind that is an open air shed roofed addition added in about 2015, and that shelters some historic boats that have been donated to them. Them being the County Historical Society, which owns these buildings. This is standing in the original threshing floor looking northwest towards the North Mow, I guess is how you pronounce that. And I included a picture of one of the ship carvings. The beam you see here is loaded with carvings and initials, and it was really fun to see what people have put on it over the years. This is the circa 1855 gravel brick building contributing. Here's the side view of it with an original louvered. We don't really know what was stored inside. We suspect it might have been hides because there were a lot of nails in the joists overhead. Next to it is a circa 1900 milk house, which is non-contributing. This is the interior. Some of the joists have been replaced, especially since I saw it first 20 years ago. This is the contributing 1854 mile marker. It's marked 14M to CI, which means 14 miles to Cape Island. It was erected for the Cape May Turnpike Company, established in 1854, and Holmes was an incorporator. This is the cemetery, which is a contributing site. It has 9 burials of both Cressy and Holmes family members, plus 1 unrelated man. And the burial dates range from 1767 to 1828. Now let's talk about the non-contributing buildings. First, we have a circa 1958 greenhouse, which is partially below ground. The owner at the time was Dr. LeCaire, who built it. He grew poinsettias and distributed them to his patients. We don't have that kind of treatment anymore, do we, from our doctors? This is a circa 1900 two-seat privy. I love the sliding window that you see here to allow fresh air in. This is a circa 2005 carriage shed, so called because it truly holds a collection of historic carriages and wagons that belong to the Historical Society. Here's that milk house, a close-up of it. That was moved to the site, probably in the 1980s. And if I get, whoops, this is last slide. This is the non-contributing office to the left and the research library to the right. The research library was built in 1987. The office section is composed of a circa 1930 colonial revival house that was moved to the site in 1991 and joined with the library. And that is it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun. Oh, now I'm being echoey. Questions from the board? Let's see where I am. Comments or questions from the board? Should Joe?
I have one question, sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
Do you know anything more about the unrelated man buried in the cemetery?
Yes, he was a merchant who was visiting and he passed away. I think he was from Philadelphia and he passed away there, so they buried him there.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I just have one comment, and that is this is an amazing nomination. And as I've said before, it is our life's work to update old National Register nominations, but it is so scholarly and well written. And I loved comprehensive nature of comparing the house to other extant works in the area and trying to pin down a builder. I love the discussion of the gravel wall building because that is such a rarity and totally in the who knew category of New Jersey resources. And I think your discussion of why the English barn is a legitimately part of this district, even though it's been moved to the site, is spot on. There's nothing non-contributing about that building. And it's just great to see a rural site with a more or less complete ensemble of the buildings that would accompany the main house, which is usually the focus. So thank you for an immense amount of work.
Oh, thank you, Janet. Thank
You
you.
know I'm a fan, but
I know.
I'm not allowed to have favorites, but federal just makes my heart sing. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
I,
really did a deep dive on that storage building.
this is David, and I'd like to echo Janet's comments. This was a pleasure to read, Joan.
Oh,
I
thank
have
you.
I have comments in places like great detective work. I also was taken with the gravel building. I and I think most of us know Fowler for the octagons, but that this gravel component of his work was just exciting. And thank you very much. I've started spending a week with friends down in Ocean City, and then traveling and looking at sites. And so I'm keeping this with me. So when we go down in October, hopefully some of these places will be accessible to look at that point.
That'll be exciting. Thank you. Yeah, I did find a few minor corrections as I was rereading the nomination, transcribed words or whatever, but those will be corrected too.
And Joan, I just want to commend you again. Your work's great. We should really distribute your work as models that other folks can use. It's
Oh,
really,
thank you.
it's really extraordinary. And as a fellow South Jersey, it makes me even happier. The South.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate your words.
It really is great work.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the board or questions? Dare I move along to comments or questions from the public? Bob has his hand up, but I'm just wondering if we could close the PowerPoint.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry,
so we
yes.
can see the people a little better.
Oh, okay. Does that help? No, wait, I'm out of PowerPoint, so.
I think you need to stop sharing.
Oh, stop. Yes, thank you. Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Thank you.
That work?
Thank you
Okay.
both.
Okay.
Andrea, did we have anyone from the public or the Historical Society?
Nobody from the Historical Society, I don't believe.
Okay, I think Bob had his hand up. I'm sorry, Bob.
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. First of all, great work, and thank you for doing it. On the gravel wall, I like the fact that the idea behind the gravel wall was converted to a manufactured product so that you could more easily use it and employ it. You didn't need forms for construction and so on. Would you assess the likelihood of finding more examples of the use of this product? Has the search for it been really extensive? When I look at that photograph of it, I'm kind of thinking, haven't I seen this before somewhere? I mean, I know we did a house, I think it was in Atlantic County near Mays Landing, about 15 or 20 years ago that used the same product at about the same time. And I think maybe Nancy Zerbe did that nomination. I don't remember the name of the house. But but this is an interesting outbuilding that uses it. So I guess that's my first question. My second question has to do with hinges in the 1704 main kitchen L. Are there any hinges there that date from the original construction, do you think? I mean, 1704 would be a little early for HL hinges, not impossible, but a little bit early. Were there any just H hinges there?
Well, let me start with your first question. I found that the most common reason why gravel brick buildings are not recognized is because usually they were covered with stucco. So and in fact, the one I saw in Bridgeton, the only reason I noticed it was gravel brick is because the stucco was failing and it exposed the bricks underneath. So I suspect we have a ton of these buildings that are unrecognized, probably in many more states than I cite in the nomination. So yes, absolutely, there are probably a lot more that have not been discovered for that very reason. And we're lucky with this one that it was never stucco covered. The other example in Cape May County is the Dr. John Wiley house, and that was stuccoed and then scored to look like stone. Typical for the mid-1800s. Now, your second question was about the hinges. I have to go back and look at my pictures. I don't believe any original doors are extant for the first floor. The second floor, I think they are just H hinges. I'm pretty sure it's just an H. I don't think it's an HL. And the 2 closet doors there are original, with original hinges.
For 1704, I would expect an H hinge rather than an HL hinge.
Mm-hmm. They sure looked original to me.
That might be significant if you want to check on that.
Yeah, I will, but I'm almost certain.
Yeah, and a good photograph of it, at least for your own records, would be useful to have.
Yeah, I have tons of photos.
Comparison to other early buildings with H hinges.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Anything else from the board? Or other comments from the public? I'm sorry?
Nothing in the chat to speak.
Okay. Should we move on then? Do I hear a nomination, a proposal? I forgot the word.
This is David. I make a motion that we accept the nomination. We gratefully accept it.
I second.
I didn't hear who seconded.
Michael.
Michael.
Trava. Call the question?
David Abramson.
Yes.
Michael Schroppen.
Yes.
Janet Foster.
Yes.
Kathleen John Alder.
And I hope that's a yes.
Yes, in the chat. Gregory Latanzi.
Yes.
Kate Ogden.
Yes, with pleasure.
Anthony Piniello.
Yes.
Michael Siegel.
Yes.
Hetty Williams.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan. It was great.
Thank you.
Moving on. The second nomination on the list is now the Sandbrook Headquarters Road, Stone Arch Bridge, over a tributary of the 3rd Neshannock River, Delaware Township, Hunter County.
And Carla Cielo will be presenting all of the bridge nominations.
So what do I do to get the video?
So you need to share your screen in the upper right hand corner next to the leave button. There's a share button.
Okay. And now. And how do I get to do I just open it in my? Okay, so it's open, but how does it get to the actual screen?
Did you hit the share button?
Yes.
Maybe hit it again now that you've opened the PowerPoint.
Content only, share. Add background? No, we don't want that. It's not letting me hit it again.
Is your PowerPoint running?
The PowerPoint is open.
Okay.
Well, it's actually, I have it in a PDF. I don't have it in a PowerPoint. Does that make a difference?
I don't believe it should, because you should be able to share whatever's on your screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you open it so it covers the screen? Is that what you've got now?
Yeah.
If it would make it easier, I have a copy of the power or the PDF. I can just put it up and then you just let me know when you want to move the slides.
Okay, let's do that, please.
Okay,
Sorry.
no problem.
Nope, not that.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Can we get it into full screen? Okay. Okay. So yes, this is Delaware Township. It's not Tewksbury. I think it was stated incorrectly in the beginning that it was Tewksbury, but it's Delaware Township. You could move on to the next screen. And let me just, I have a box here, so it's hiding part of it, but okay. Delaware Township is in the southern portion of Hunterdon County. This is one of 14 stone arch bridges that are in the Delaware Township MPDF, which has both stone arch bridges and truss bridges. So today we're just concentrating on 5 stone arch bridges, and the circle shows where it is centrally located in the town. So each bridge represents a continuity of craftsmanship with slight variations stemming from the handmade character of the site conditions. And their significance is based on the collective grouping, which together creates and conveys a strong sense of historic place. So next slide. So each bridge is built, this one is actually in Delaware Township, but it's on an abandoned road, so it is not part of the MPDF. But because it's partially collapsed, it shows how they're constructed. And they are all constructed with a single layer of vertically oriented stones, typically sandstone. Some are argillite, but typically sandstone. And they all are, the arch barrel on each bridge is faced with cut sandstone arch, with a cut stone sandstone arch ring on both sides. Some have a keystone, some don't. Some of the arch barrels are a full semicircle. Some are a segmental arch. And they all have wing walls. Some are splayed. Some have capstones. Some are tapering. But they all are recognizable as being characteristic of Delaware Township. So each one has its own importance. So next slide. So the surgeons, the headquarters, Sandbrook Headquarters Bridge is on Sandbrook Headquarters Road, which was charted in 1777, I think. I can't read that because there's a blocking, but I think it's 1777. And the bridge is right next to the Amwell Church of the Brethren, which was first built in 1811 on the current site of the church. And the bridge was built in 1873 according to its date stone. And so it was most likely not the first bridge on the site, since this road was important. Next slide. This is a 1901 bridge view showing the bridge and the church. Next slide. This is the same view circa 1940. Next slide. And the same view from 1980. And next slide. And the same view from today. So the setting remains rural. The church is actually from, I think, 1955. It had burnt down, but they rebuilt it in a style that matched the older church. Next slide. So there you can see on the map that there's 3 roads that come in. So there's actually 3 bridges that are very close to each other. The northern one is a concrete bridge, and then the circle is the Stone Arch Bridge. And the one on Dunkard Church Road, it shows in the old photo, and it has stone wing walls, and it's a steel stringer bridge. So in the area between the 2 bridges, they flooded, and that's where they dunked the parishioners for baptism, which gives the name the Dunkard Church Road. Next slide. So here's the date stone, saying 1873, and Joseph Smith, who was the county collector, and he was a freeholder, and he was active on many bridges. Okay, next slide. And you can see that the visual prominence of this bridge, because if you have the church with the parking lot, and there's a grass area, and the Dunkard Church Road that comes in next to it, so it's very, very visual bridge. And I think because of its visibility, the builders sort of chose to refine the basic form of the Stone Arch Bridge in a gracious manner. Next slide. It has the lowest arch barrel of any bridge in the MPDF. There is actually one other that has a low arch barrel like that, but it's on a private driveway. It's 0.25 of a semicircle. So it's a very, very, very low arch, and it actually will submerge in heavy rains. So it becomes completely covered. Next slide. So here's another view. So the low barrel vault reduces the humpback in the road to basically, there's a slight raise, but it's not very minimal. So I think that's why it was chosen, and also because of its visibility. Next slide. And here's another view. Now notice, so some of the arch barrels are set in an inset panel. This one has the vertical lines, the vertical seams of the inset panel, and only a partial horizontal seam. And we don't know why. Next, and this is the upstream side, and that side just has the vertical seams of the inset panel. Next slide. That's the arch barrel. And next slide. And you can see the first springer is triangular because of the low rise. Next. So in plan, the wing walls are asymmetrical, and it's almost like a mirror image on each side. So next slide. And you can see that today. Next slide. Okay, and this also shows the vertical seams, and there's a cattle coursing gate hook to prevent the cattle from going under the bridge. Next slide. So probably because of the low rise, it had a collapse. I think it was 2009 about. And the county did a fabulous job reconstructing. They built a plywood centering, and they rebuilt the stone. Next slide. The stone barrel vault in a traditional manner. You can see the patch right there. And that's basically all they did. They reset a few capstones, but they did not take down the parapet walls. And basically, all they did was do the repair that was needed in a traditional fashion. Next slide. There's the grout from the top, and next slide, and the road surface going back on. And next slide. So Sandbrook Headquarters Road Stone Arch Bridge meets the requirements set forth in the associated MPDF. It reflects the growth and prominence of the local agriculture community. It contributes to the improvements of a rural road network and the ability of the local farmers to transport their crops and attend church services. There's also a cemetery nearby. So the bridge is constructed within the period of significance for stone arch bridges in Delaware Township and shows a vernacular but refined character in the construction of its parapets and wing walls. And the stone arch ring shows a distinction in workmanship from the spandrels and the wing walls. The arch barrel remains intact but repaired. And the bridge maintenance is does not affect its eligibility because it does not affect the overall character of the bridge at all. And that's it.
Thank you. Questions and comments from the board?
This is David. I only have a copy of the text. I don't have a copy of the photographs or diagrams available. But I had a little bit of trouble in putting together the photographs and the text. And I'm looking at my notes. I'm thinking it's because the photographs may not have clearly depicted the side or described it. And the other thing, I don't recall in the diagrams seeing upstream and downstream identified on a diagram. Correct me if I'm wrong, but throughout the text, you use upstream and downstream. And it'd be, since that's the case, it'd be very helpful in that plan that you showed. I believe there's a 1981 from Lair to depict upstream and downstream graphically, so that it'd be clear.
I drew the drawing, the 1981 drawing that's only for Pine Hill Road Bridge. So I drew the drawing.
Oh, Pine Hill. That was Pine Hill. Okay.
Yeah, the flow shows the flows with the arrow.
Okay, so is it on there? I mean, did I miss it? Fine. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Anything else?
Janet?
Janet?
Question? Thank you. I had to learn a whole new architectural vocabulary with this. I do not know about bridges, and the multiple property diagram they had was like right by my side when I read this. Very, very helpful. I have a number of sort of language comments that I'm just going to email because I'm a fussy editor. But I think right out of the gate, when you describe in the nomination, the arch barrel has an 11-foot span with a very low rise of only 0.25. And my question was, what does this mean? You just explained it beautifully in the presentation. And because National Register nominations are going to be read by a lot of people who are not primarily engineers, I think that kind of smoothing of language, it's a segmental arch. It's a very low segmental arch. It's good to know in a footnote that it's a quarter of a circle, but as far as the National Register reader and use, what you just said, and presumably it's recorded, you can go back and get that, I thought was very helpful in understanding, and also understanding why is this bridge so flat the way I would describe it. It doesn't clear the water. Okay, question answered. Doesn't seem to be a problem until it was, and the bridge collapsed. I was a little alarmed when I read that in the nomination, but everybody seems cool with, it's made of stone, you repair it with stone, and it seems fine. So, yeah, but some of your description, the technical description is important, and I'm just appreciating the non-technical, the more narrative expression as well. And when you talked about this, just now you said the stones were vertical. You were referring to the arch stones, yes?
Right, the brown,
Okay.
yeah, arch barrel.
And how would you describe the other stones that are flat?
So the arch barrel is just one layer of stone, and then
Yep.
you have the face stones, which
Okay.
are also vertical, but then the parapet and wing walls, those could be horizontally laid,
Okay.
like
Okay.
regular bearing stonework.
Right. Well, and that's the part that I see. So it's just a comment for this and all subsequent, this group of nominations. You use the term longitudinal to describe stonework, and I was very confused by that. Stones are horizontal or vertical and maybe diagonal, but longitudinal is talking about something completely different. And I just didn't understand what you meant by that. But if you meant vertical, that's probably a more accessible term, again, in making this readable for the readers of National Register nominations. And that goes through all 5 of these, unless that means something else. And not being a bridge engineer, I don't get it. So you tell me why they were longitudinal, not vertical in the text.
In each presentation, I chose a different picture to illustrate that. So you will see it in like 5 different ways. Because I know,
Okay.
like, because you can't see it in a bridge unless you have a collapse, right? Because you don't see a cross section.
Right. But is longitudinal the right word? I mean, that makes me think of navigation.
Right, right. Okay. Probably not. No.
Probably not. We're not, there's water involved here, but not that much. So
Okay.
I ask you to think about that in all of those as, again, a word choice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything else?
I could add a little bit if you'd like.
Please.
I'm Chuck Taylor from the Delaware Township. I live at the end of that street, or up the street. The bridge is at the end of the street, and I watched them do the repairs. The bridge did not collapse. It developed a hole in the arch. It was only a very small percentage of the arch, so it's not like it's a new bridge.
Okay.
Now, about the longitudinal, that sort of means lengthwise. It doesn't necessarily mean longitude like on the surface of the earth. And I'm not sure exactly where you're talking about, but Carla probably has it right. It's my guess. And another interesting feature of that bridge is that the arch is at an angle to the roadway. It's not straight across the road. It's at an angle, which makes it very unusual, not unheard of, but it's unusual, so it's very special that way. I was going to say something else about it that I have to remember. Oh, it was on the cover of the county's study they did of bridges. They actually made a book of historic bridges in Hunterdon County. The road department itself made that book, and this bridge was on the cover of it back in '85 or something, which is very interesting. And actually, I think that contributed to their willingness to do such a nice job repairing it. Their first reaction was, oh, we got to tear it down and build a 2-lane bridge. But they agreed not to and did, as Carla said, a really nice job fixing it properly.
Thank you for your comments. Carla, did you reference the book cover anywhere? Just curious, not asking for it.
I think that's probably the Booth Beach survey. But I think it's referenced, but not as the cover photo.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thanks. I just wondered.
Can you
Any other, Janet?
Kathleen is trying to speak and has a hand up, and we need to, if you don't have her in the picture, you wouldn't know. So
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble with that. Kathleen?
we have to look in the chat, maybe?
Kathleen's having problems with audio like I did before.
Oh, frustrating.
The last message was that she checked out and tried logging in again to see if that would help. No. Okay, so okay to go ahead, Kathleen? Okay. Anyone else? I sort of didn't really close the board comments, but board, Bob?
If there are no other board comments right now, I want to say, Carla, I'm so pleased to see you doing this. First of all, it's good to see you again. And our paths so rarely cross. But thank you for doing it. I check a couple of boxes here. I'm a former resident of Delaware Township. So I am so delighted to see Delaware Township doing this. And I also am delighted whenever I see new nominations being added under a multiple property documentation form umbrella, which makes those MPDFs more effective. And so hopefully other townships in Hunterdon County will eventually do the same thing. But meanwhile, it gives me pride of place to know that Delaware Township is doing this. And I'm also delighted to see nominations go forward for bridges that have been properly repaired and rehabilitated. It's very nice to see that. So I think this is a perfect bridge to lead off your presentation with. And I want to congratulate you on that selection. And look forward to seeing the others. But I wanted to mention that Michael Gall, the archaeologist with RGA, wrote a report a couple of years ago on the Stone Arch Bridge, the rehabilitation of the Stone Arch Bridge on Route 27 in Princeton across Stony Brook. And he's got some useful background in there about Stone Arch bridges. That was, on a principal highway. This was on a local road. So they're not exactly comparable, but it just would be useful to do. And if you can find that report, it would I think you'd be interested in it. And with that, I'll stop talking.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else from the public?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Thanks. Do I hear a proposal or a motion?
I would move that we accept the Sandbrook Headquarters Road Bridge into the multiple property historic district nomination form. With the emendation or with, and well, actually, did we have emendation? We had a lot of comments. I don't know that we had
I recorded
corrections.
two emendations,
Okay.
both from you. One was to explain better the low arch as
Yep.
was done in the presentation, and the second was to use vertical rather than longitudinal.
Where appropriate. Yes. Thank you, Andrea. So accept with those corrections. Thank you.
Just my understanding of longitudinal is it would be horizontal rather than vertical.
Yeah. Well, that's my understanding too, but it seems like it's describing vertical. So that's why I asked the question.
Okay, so it should
Well,
really go vertical
okay.
or horizontal.
Kate,
Bob?
longitudinal, I think, is meant in the opposite of transverse. So transverse would be across the length of. Longitudinal would be consonant with the length of. So it's not vertical or horizontal, but it's along the length of or parallel to the length of versus across the width of. So longitudinal versus
Okay,
transverse.
so we're going to throw that back to Carla to think hard about how put that concept into vernacular speech, vernacular writing for the,
Or to explain it.
or to explain it, or to diagram it. It's not diagrammed in the MDPF, so yeah.
Because vertical would all mean vertical, and they're not. They go down. You know, they they follow the arch. So
Okay.
I don't think vertical's exactly right.
No, okay, you're right. It's not, but I couldn't. I still can't place that. But that's just because I'm not a bridge engineer. Sorry, but I do support the nomination. So
We
We need a
had
second.
moved on to a motion, but I have Nancy Bond in the chat who would like to make a statement in favor of the proposal. Is it too late, Andrea?
He says next proposal.
Oh, okay, the next. Okay,
Not
sorry
there
about
yet.
that. So did we have a second on the motion?
I'm happy to second it.
Thanks,
David.
Dave. Someone needs to mute.
Call from B. Clark, urgent.
Urgent.
Okay, I call the question.
So David Abramson,
Yes.
Michael Sharapa,
Yes.
Janet Foster,
Yes.
Kathleen John Older.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can
Hi.
hear you.
Hi.
Good,
Yes.
but I don't think you can see me, but I think it says my camera stopped working, but I'm here.
Gregory Latanzi,
Yes.
Kate Ogden,
Yes.
Anthony Piniello,
Yes.
Michael Siegel,
Yes.
Eddie Williams.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm hoping that since there's a series of bridges, we have 4 more small bridges, maybe some of the general information can, just be sort of incorporated quickly. The next nomination, according to my new list, is the Yard Road Stone Arch Bridge over a tributary of Sandbrook, Delaware Township, Hunterdon County. Oh, and I should have asked, does anyone need to recuse? I'm going to take you all at your your silent words.
Kate,
Please go ahead, Carla.
Kate, this is Kathleen. What I was trying to say for the last one, which I just popped in the end of this conversation, is I was having a little trouble with the longitudinal axis as well. But what you might try to say is that the stones are placed vertically with the long axis of the stone perpendicular to the face of the wall. Something like that is what I think, because it's a little bit like it's a Roman brick. So it's pointed vertically, but the long axis is perpendicular to the face of the wall is what I think what they mean by the longitudinal. Correct me if I'm wrong, or if it's not perpendicular parallel to, but language like that might be more helpful. And that was my comment from before. And now I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you for that. Carla? Is Andrea going to run the PowerPoint again?
Stephanie will.
Okay, thank you.
Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. This is the Yard Road Stone Arch Bridge, which is next slide. It's very close. It's very close to the previous one in Delaware Township. Next slide. This go back one slide. Yeah, you can see the color coding of the roads. This is by Marilyn Cummings from her mapping. So the yellow are 18th century, and the orange is another era, and the blue are late 19th century. So you can just get an idea from this overall map. Okay, next slide. So this is another view that shows the single layer of upright stones, whatever we want to call them, faced with a cut sandstone arch ring. This is the Croton Bridge, which we hope to save, also in Delaware Township, but not in today's list, but hopefully future. Next slide. So what is today Yard Road? Started, it shows on the 1828 Gordon map, connecting what was the Higgins Schoolhouse with a mill in Sandbrook. And you can see the road on the 1851 map. It passed right where the Sandbrook stream is. I don't know if you can see my finger pointing, but there was a blacksmith shop and a copper mine, and that's a hillside. So the road actually went over the hill, making it very difficult to reach the other farms on the other side of the stream, the Heiss farm, the Young farm. So next slide. So the farmers petitioned for a bypass, so they didn't want to have to go up and over that hill. And the copper mine actually did close, though. That closed probably before 1860, as most copper mines did in the area. But they still were incumbent by a stream and a hill. So they did a bypass road, and that is today's Yard Road. And so the bypass, it was charted in 1872. And the Stone Arch Bridge accompanied that bypass. Next slide. So this site has a slight raise, a slight hill just past the bridge, and a bend at the bridge. So the mason had to conform the bridge to the site. So the arch is set on a skew angle of 10%, which is pretty great. And the wing walls conform to the bend in the wall. There is one poured concrete wing wall which was added, probably lengthened early on, maybe as early as the 30s. We don't know for sure, but could be 30s or 40s. Next slide. And the arrows show the, go back one. So the arrows show the direction of the stream. So the upstream is to the north and the downstream is to the south. Next slide. So here you're seeing the bend in the road and the arch of the bridge conforming to that landscape, and the slight rise as it just goes past the bridge. And next slide. And this is probably 50s view. The county photographs are not, the date is not given, so we have to just guess. Okay, next photograph. So here is the concrete wing wall. From the road, you can't even see it because it's below the roadway. You can only see it from the upstream side, which is all covered with vegetation and nobody can walk there anyway. So it's really not visible, so it does not distract from the stonework at all. And you can see the old capstone. This bridge has just about all of its capstones remaining, which is rare. The capstones in a stone arch bridge match the wall thickness. So there's no overhang for that's just how they built it. Next slide. So this is a 30s or 40s photo that shows the concrete ring wall. We don't know why it was built at all. Next slide. So the upstream and the downstream views. The upstream it has the vertical seams for the inset panel, but it never had a horizontal component. And the parapet is off-centered to align with the bend in the road. And the downstream side did have a full inset panel. A truck hit this bridge probably about 2 or 3 years ago, I think in 2021. And the county rebuilt the parapet using the original stone and reusing the original capstones, but somehow the inset panel was lost. But still, they did a great job laying the stone and putting back the capstones. Okay, next slide. And oh, I think this slide is meant to show how that parapet is off-centered. Okay, next slide. This is the upstream side. It probably was repointed in when they built that concrete extension, and it's never been repointed since. Next slide. This is the vertical tapering seam for a partial inset panel. Next slide. And this is the downstream side, which was rebuilt above that keystone, but it still has the vertical seams of the inset panel. Okay, next slide. And this arch is also a segmental arch. You could just go back to that other one. But it's a higher rise. It's 0.33% of a circle. So it's a higher rise than the Sandbrook Headquarters Road Bridge. Okay, next. And the capstones again. And it's still rare to have all the capstones intact. And I think that's it. Next slide. So again, it reflects the growth and permanency of a local agricultural community. It shows a vernacular but refined character in the construction of its parapet and wing walls. And the arch ring shows a distinction in workmanship. And the reconstruction is limited, but does not affect its eligibility under the MPDF. And that's it.
Thank you. I just, as the art historian, I have to say that they're such charming bridges. They're very picturesque. And I think that the asymmetry and the off-center quality, that just, adds to the charm and the picturesque quality. Questions or comments, other questions or comments from the board? I don't see, I see Hattie had to leave.
Yeah.
Janet?
Yes. Again, all these you see one and then you think of something for the others. In the initial description of the property, as you're reading it, having it very clear what the bridge number is so that it syncs up with the multiple property map, which only gives bridges by numbers instead of by names, would be just a helpful linking of these sites to the multiple property form.
Be ready to talk.
Janet, were you expecting a response?
Yeah, well, I put it out there as a suggestion, I guess.
Suggestion.
Nod with me, Carla. Just nod.
It was in there. I don't know why that was taken out, but the bridge numbers were in there.
It's in some of them, but not all of them. And this is one where it doesn't appear. And I'm
editing.
Like, well, so there's some real editing. Look for a couple things, but looking for the numbers because that's your map. I mean, that map that was part of the document. So thank you. No, it's part of a great group of little bridges.
And I'm sure Andrea got that, and it's recorded for emendations. Anything else from the board? This one, I think we had, if there's nothing from the board, I'll go to the public. Nancy Bond had a statement, I believe, for this one.
Talk. Tab. No, just start talking.
Oh, hello. This is Nancy Bond. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're clear.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Delaware Township. I've been secretary for the Delaware Township Historic Advisory Committee for many years. I'm pleased to offer comments in support of our 5 historic bridges that are being presented today. And the nominations are thorough and well documented. We don't have any substantive comments on the content, just to give my full support as a longtime resident of Delaware Township who enjoys living in the country and having these wonderful covered bridges, or the one covered bridge and the rest of these stone arch bridges, etc. Many parts of Delaware Township have not changed much in the past 100 to 150 years. The rural landscape that invokes the strong sense of the past when you travel through the township, whether on foot, bicycle, car, or horseback. It is easy to imagine what it was like when these bridges were being built. The bridges being considered today, as well as many other aspects of the landscape, contribute to the ability to imagine yourself in the past. They retain a great deal of integrity, particularly in the feeling of Delaware Township. These bridges contribute to the Delaware Township agricultural economy and enable people to build community connections by enhancing their ability to move through the area. The bridges are also important for their design features and engineering characteristics. Despite repairs and maintenance through the years, they retain their original feeling of integrity of materials and workmanship. Perhaps most importantly, they remain in service in their original locations and functions. These nominations will supplement and strengthen the historic bridges of Delaware Township, multiple property listings, and will help ensure their continuing maintenance in a way that respects and preserves their historic significance. We support their listing in the New Jersey and the National Registries of Historic Places. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Was there anyone else from the public? I thought I saw Bob's hand almost go up. Bob?
Thank you. Carla, again, thank you. I just wanted to ask to clarify to whom we have to thank for the good work on the 2 bridges you've presented so far. Is it the township engineer or the county engineer?
Oh, the good work? Yeah. The county engineer. Yes. The
The
county
county
engineer.
engineer who's
Yeah.
was on board with this. Okay, great. I wondered whether it was because the county engineer has not always been friendly to every
Don't say it.
effort to preserve stone arch bridges in Hunterdon, but these they're on board with apparently.
We're trying to work with Tom Matthews on the Croton Bridge, and these 2, we told him these 2 are the best work that he's done in his office, and yeah, we want to keep going forward with this.
You didn't mention, of course, it's in the MPDF, but I believe it is the case that Hunterdon County has a larger collection of stone arch bridges than any other county in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you mentioned the collective importance of these bridges. Well, that's what it's about, but it's also it's a strong chapter in the importance of this kind of bridge technology in rural areas. And Hunterdon County is the best example I know of the use of stone arch bridges. And I think there's more to be understood, more to be learned about the history of bridge building in Hunterdon that explains the presence of so many stone arch bridges. But that's another story for another time.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else?
Nothing else in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. I guess we're at the point of asking for a motion. Not that I'm rushing, but we do have a,
We do have a deadline. I'm like, come on, people.
it's a long day.
All right, I nominate the Yard Road, Stone Arch
Yard
Bridge.
Road, Stone Arch Bridge.
I'll second. This is Greg.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Greg.
Call
Dave
the
Abramson.
question. Thank you, Andrea.
Yes.
Michael Strabo,
Yes.
Janet Foster,
Yes.
Kathleen John Alder,
Yes.
Gregory Latanzi,
Yes.
Kate Ogden,
Yes.
Anthony Paniello,
Yes. Sorry, I had my mute on.
thank you, Jen. Michael Siegel.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next up is Buchanan Road, I believe.
Yes.
And I think Federal Twist.
Federal Twist is
Oh, you're
what you
right.
have on my list, Andrea. Federal Twist Road, Stone Arch Bridge over Shirt Run Creek, Delaware Township, Hunterdon County. No recusals, I'm assuming. Please go ahead, Carla. And whoever's running slides.
Okay, next slide. So this bridge is almost in Kingwood Township, in the southern part of the township. It's on Federal Twist Road, which is yellow in the map, so that's an 18th century road. Next slide. This is another view of those upright stones that form the arch barrel. This is actually a bridge in Tewksbury that I took it in. That so you can see how, and this is not even sandstone, but that's how they were made. You can see how they were by this photo. Okay, next photo, next slide. So all are faced with the arch ring, and this bridge is the best example in Delaware Township of the inset panel. So you can see the horizontal seam, so that cantilevers the parapet. So it actually, the bridge is wider between the parapets than it is at the arch ring. And you can see the vertical seams. We'll get into that a little more. Next slide. So as I said, Federal Twist Road was charted in 1775 to connect a ferry at the Delaware River with a mill in Kingwood Township. None of the earlier maps show this creek. It's really just a drainage ditch from farms. So I don't know if there was an earlier bridge there or not. It doesn't show on the 1851 map. It doesn't show on the 1860 map. Next slide. The earliest map that it shows is the 1887 topographical map, and it also shows on the 1902 map. So it possibly that it's the first bridge. Maybe since it was so small a creek that they just went right through it in the spring when it was, because it probably dried up it does dry up in the summer, so it still does. So we don't know. But it's not a dated bridge. So the date of the third quarter of the 19th century is just based on its style. Next slide. And here's some old views. Again, not dated, but probably 40s or 50s. Next slide. This is 80, looking north. Next slide. So this bridge is has a perpendicular arch barrel. The arch barrel is perpendicular to the roadway, and the wing walls are fairly symmetrical. The arrows indicate the direction of the flow. Some of the capstones remain, and some don't. There's some areas of poured concrete. So where the stonework shows on the plan, that's where the capstones remain. Next line. And the view today, looking north. The setting remains rural. And next slide. And looking south. Next slide. And here's some original capstones and some poured concrete, which has some age to it. It's definitely not recent. Okay, next slide. So the wing walls taper to the roadway, unlike the Sandbrook headquarters road bridge, where the wing walls stayed elevated on both ends above the roadway. In this bridge, they taper down to basically nothing, giving it like a triangular form to the parapets. You can see the inset panel, the outline of the arch ring, and this arch is set on a high base. Next slide. And there, that's the upstream side. Next slide. So you can see here the high base, and it's pretty neat how the base aligns with that vertical seam, which tapers, giving a seat to the arch. And you can see the cantilever, the line of the inset panel. And Bob Craig might have a reason, but we don't really know why this inset panel was used repeatedly in many bridges. And again, this is the best example of the inset panel. Okay, next slide. And there's the junction of the arch ring at the base, and where the wing walls start. That's about 8 inches where the wing walls extend beyond the plane of the arch. Okay, next. Here's the arch barrel underneath with the raised base. I think this has about an 8-foot span. The bases, I think, range from 3.5 feet high to maybe 4.5 feet. I don't remember exactly. Next slide. And this is the downstream side. Okay, next slide. And you can, there's a detail of the vertical seam and the cantilever. And the first row of stone at that seam is thinner. On this side, it's only about 3-inch high stones. And then the parapet is built on top of that. Okay, next slide. And that's just the other side of the base. Okay, next slide. And you can see how dry it is. So, the Federal Twist Stone Arch Bridge meets the requirements set forth in the associated MPDF. It's one of the best preserved stone arch bridges remaining today in Delaware Township. It illustrates peak regional characteristics of 19th century stone arch bridge construction in southern Hunterdon County. The raised bearing seats, roughly symmetrical ring walls, and dressed stone arch rings set in an inset panel. Bridge maintenance does not affect its eligibility. And basically, the maintenance is just repointing. There's hardly any reconstruction, maybe just a little bit at the ends underneath the capstones, and just the replacement of the capstones. So that's it for alterations. And that's it.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the board? And yeah, right. Sorry, I went somewhere else briefly. I don't see anything in the chat, but I do have trouble seeing everyone. Sorry, I'll scroll through. No hands up. Comments or questions? Oh, Janet?
I was just going to say, this is the classic. This bridge is the perfect example. Again, once I read this one, I was like, okay, now I really get it. The whole construction is really clear. You can read the inset panel and everything else on this. And so this is the one that you measure the others by, because they're only skewed if you thought that they should be straight, right? And this one's straight. So this is like the Parthenon of these bridges. And I got nothing but good things to say about it. So thank you for that.
Anything else from the board? I see two hands up. Mr. Taylor, would you like to speak?
Yes, I can tell you from a stonework perspective, it's easy to see why they would build that inset. It's actually made first. They would build the arch first, and given the woodwork and the technicality of making the arch, they make a very nice planar wall, meaning it's in a plane and nice and vertical as part of the engineered arch, which does such a good job holding things up for so long. But then in all of these cases, the rest of the walls are more following the landscape, and they vary, and there's curves, and sometimes they're different on the two sides. So it's just a logical place to transition from this highly engineered structure of the arch, which was a completely different matter to build from the rest of the bridge. And it allowed them to make the taper where it's larger at the bottom, which helps strengthen everything on the rest of it, while building the arch perfectly vertical, because it's just very much easier to build if you do it that way. And there's no need to make a tapered, a leaning arch. So I think that's where it came from. And then they worked it in aesthetically as something that just fit nicely and looked good. And I'm sure there's all kinds of, it's a local style of bridge. And some people did it, and they influenced other people, and probably there were many times the same people building the bridges, probably, or at least the same stoneworks who taught the same guys to make the next generation.
Mr. Taylor, this is Janet Foster. Your comments made me think. Do you understand, or would you think the barrel, the part that we see separated at the arch and the stone immediately would have been built by one person, much more skilled person, and the rest of the wall is up to apprentices, the farmers who live nearby? It's a less skilled crew who then can, I mean, they're not skillless, but who can do the flat walls. I'm just curious, does that represent two hands at work?
It's very possible, but the crew that did the arches themselves was very skilled in an engineering oriented crew, where when they got to the rest of it, it's a big job to build even a small bridge like that out of stone.
Right.
But it's worth it to build it that way because they last longer than the bridges we build today. And around the world, there's stone arch bridges that are thousands of years old. If they get maintained occasionally, they last almost forever. And they were built for horses and wagons. They didn't drive cement trucks over them. And back then, it's amazing that they survived it all. But that's exactly right. I think it's very technical. The arch part, it would be more likely to be the best workers and the ones that do that part of the job, and then they'd bring in a big crew to build the rest of it.
Thank you. Bob?
Just one thought that the people who built this bridge, I think, were very practiced in building arch bridges inside a stone inset. And I think that Chuck Taylor's onto it with what he's said. And I think that, as far as dating this bridge, it probably is a little bit later than some of the other bridges that show inset walls that you've described, because they seem to have been, they really got their act together on this one.
Call from Patricia Cox.
Could someone mute, please? Thanks. Other comments from the public?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Thanks, Andrea. Do I hear a motion? Moving along. I can't see everyone at once.
David,
Davey,
I make a motion that we accept this, recommend it.
I second.
That was Michael Chirapa. Thank you. Call the question, Andrea?
Dave Abramson,
Yes.
Michael Sharapa,
Yes.
Janet Foster,
Yes.
Kathleen John Alder,
Yes.
Gregory Latanzi,
Yes.
Kate Ogden,
Yes.
Anthony Paniello,
Yes.
Michael Siegel.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. So next up, I guess, is Buchanan.
Buchanan Road. I would like to suggest that we try to get through the next 2 stone bridges and see how we feel in terms of a break. Is everyone all right with that?
Yep.
If anyone has to, pop out for a minute, you can always, I think you can turn your cameras off. So it is Buchanan Road, Stone Arch Bridge, tributary of Alexacan Creek, Delaware Township, Hunterdon County. Go ahead, Carla.
Okay, next slide. So it's in the southwestern portion of Delaware Township on a relatively new road. This bridge was once in Delaware Township. It probably was demolished in the 20s, a long time ago in Croton. But you can see it's the triple, you can see the arch facing to show how typical they all are. This triple did not have an inset panel, and it had a very high rise. You can tell that the road really went high above the arches because this is a very old one. It's a semicircular arch. Next slide. So Buchanan Road does not show on the 1851 map. It was charted in 1857 and it shows on the 1860 map. So we assume that the bridge was built in 1857 when the road was charted. It's a connector farm road that basically it's only like a mile, a little more than a mile long, and it just connects 2 farm roads. Okay, next slide. This is the closest house to the bridge. It's now gone. It's now part of Dilt's Farm Park. Next slide. And this is the road. This is an earlier view because you can tell by the guardrails they're just timber. So the reason why I showed you that Croton Bridge is because I wanted you to see how a road had a humpback. This road is flat, but it's also a a semicircular bridge. So the semicircle of the arch barrel was used to raise the road specifically for this site because the stream is low. It's in a ravine. So they wanted a level road. So next slide. And here's a later view with a later guardrail. This guardrail has concrete posts that actually still remain. Next view. And this is today. You don't see too much of the bridge. Actually, you don't see any of the parapets. The parapets are very low, and the road was raised with the macadam. But next view. So here's the semicircular arch set on a raised base, and the original road deck was 9 feet above the stream. So the semicircle was chosen for this site to raise the road, and I think that's pretty important. Unlike the Sandbrook headquarters road, where they chose specifically a very low arch for that site. So this bridge has the decorative arch ring set in the inset panel and tapering parapet walls. And even originally, those parapet walls went below the roadway. The second line, the second red line is the current road. Okay, next slide. And here's the bridge in plan. The arch barrel is set on a 5-degree angle off axis. And where you have the cross marks, that section, yeah, that section was rebuilt. Next slide. Here's the arch barrel and the raised base. The bases were covered in concrete a long time ago, but the stonework remains intact underneath. Next slide. Here's the inset panel. The one wing wall was rebuilt pretty much to the center of the arch, but they did put back the cantilever line of stone, and they kept the inset, the design of the inset panel. To the left of the arch barrel, that's all original stonework, and the arch ring, of course, is original on the upstream side. Next view. This is probably the same upstream side before any reconstruction. Next view. This bridge is interesting in that there isn't a true keystone. It has paired viscers at the apex of the arch. We didn't talk about keystones in any of the other presentations, but I think that must show the mason, like, because why didn't he build? And it's not a cracked stone. And you'll see it on the other side too. Next slide. And here's the downstream side, and it also has no true keystone. This side is all pretty much original. It has been repointed, but the stonework looks original to me. And the inset panel is in really descriptive here. Matches the quality of the Federal Twist Road Bridge. Okay, next slide. And that's the wing wall to the right. Next slide. And there's the apex of the arch without a true keystone. Next, and the cantilever of the parapet walls. So the Buchanan Road Stone Arch Bridge meets the registration requirements set forth in the MPDF. The bridge accompanied the road construction in 1857 and thereby contributed to the improvement of a previously established road network. The bridge shows a vernacular character in the construction of its parapets and wing walls and arch ring. The arch barrel and arch ring remain intact, and it's, I think, significant as a choice for the segmental arch. For the semicircular arch rather than a segmental arch. The bridge has enhanced significance because of its skewed construction. Okay, and that's it.
Thank you. Let's see. Comments from the board. Comments or questions? Don't hear anything. Comments or questions from the public? I guess we're moving along a bit.
I don't see anything in the chat.
Thank you. I don't see any hands raised. I have to keep scrolling around just in case. Do I hear a motion?
Sure, I'll be happy to make a motion again to recommend this for inclusion on the register.
Thank you, David.
Go ahead, Michael. Go get him there on a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Teamwork, it's what it's all about. Bridges and
Amen.
Dave Abramson.
Yes.
Michael Sharapa,
Yes.
Janet Foster,
Yes.
Kathleen John Alder,
Yes.
Gregory Latanzi,
Yes.
Kate Ogden,
Yes.
Anthony Piniello,
Yes.
Michael Siegel.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
The last stone arch bridge. I'm going to, let's move ahead with the last bridge and then assess where we stand, if that's okay with everyone. The last one is the Coldwater Bridge, Delaware Township, Hunterdon County. I'm assuming no one here needs to recuse. If you do, go away. And go ahead, Carla. Thank you.
This bridge, of course, is the most majestic. It has the longest ring walls, the greatest span. It's the highest bridge. It's the semicircular bridge. Next slide. It's located. It's actually within the Covered Bridge Historic District, which had a mill. There was a mill. Next slide, I think, shows the mill. No, this just shows the construction again. This is the Croton Bridge, but you know that now. Next bridge, next slide. Okay, here's the mill. So Pine Hill Road was charted in 1849 to connect the Surgeon's Mill with a mill on what is today Old Mill Road. It's the Tunis Myers Mill. So it was next slide. So it was charted in April of 1849 to connect the two mills, and it shows on the 1851 map, the Cornell map. So April of 1849 is significant because, next slide, by September of the same year is they had the bill. That's pretty quick. The bridge was built. At the bottom right-hand corner of the date stone, which also identifies the name Coldwater Bridge, there's the name Updike. The beginning of the name is not legible, but there is a C. And in the 1860 census, there is a James C. Updike as a master mason living in, I think that's the Raven Rock area of Delaware Township. So he was only 39 years old, so he would have been only 28 years old if he was the master mason on this bridge. Next slide. And here's the date stone in situ. It's right above the inset panel in the parapet wall on the upstream side, the outside face of the upstream side. Next slide. So it's a semicircular arch with a 21-foot span, and that raised the road deck to 15 feet, over 15 feet above the stream. And it did that because, again, like the Buchanan Road Bridge, the stream created a ravine, and they wanted to level the two roads on either side of the bridge. So they wanted a level road deck. So site-specific choice of a semicircular arch and a raised base to raise that road deck. Next slide. And here, this is the downstream side. No, it's upstream, sorry. Yeah, upstream side in 1992. So this is more than double the size of any other stone arch bridge remaining today in Delaware Township. The arch has a rise of 8 foot 2 inches in itself. Okay, next slide. And this is the downstream side. There's 53 viscers on each side, including the keystone, that face the barrel vault. And despite the fact that this is one of the largest bridges, it's also one of the skinniest. It's only 16 feet wide from between parapets. Next Next, here's the roadway looking north in 1992. You can see that the parapets were triangular, and they did extend below the roadway. Next view. So here, this is the 1981 layer drawing, showing the parapets as originally constructed. Next view. And here is a view of the parapet from 1980 with the capstones that were aligned with the thickness of the wall. Next view. Now, by 1998, the county decided that the tapering parapet walls, instead of putting guardrails, they raised the height of the wing walls to above the roadway. So, you know, they could have put guardrails, but they chose not to. They chose to raise the stonework. In this photo, you can still see where that the yellow stripe, the yellow and black stripe sign is. That's still the original parapet. Okay, next. So at some point, that the junction of the original parapet and the new extended parapet probably fell apart, and so then they decided to raise the whole parapet. And this is how it looks today with foreign bluestone caps, which don't really look historic, but that is what it is. Next, still the setting remains rural, and next slide. So there was reconstruction of also the ring walls on the upstream side. I think some of the spandrels remain original, but the inset panel remains, and the arch ring remains, and the barrel remains, and the bases. Next slide. So this is another view from the upstream side, looking under the barrel. And next slide. And here's the downstream side. More stonework remains on this side. I think more of the wing walls remain. It's just the parapets that were rebuilt on this side. There's some stonework at the very left-hand corner that has no mortar, so that was not touched at all. And next slide. So you can see the next slide, I think, shows it better, but you can see where the new stonework stops, where the new stonework starts, actually, on top of the original battered stone walls. Next slide. And that's to the right, the wing wall to the right on the downstream side, and next slide. And to the left. This is the slide that you can really see where how they raised the parapets. Okay, next slide. And just another view to show really how majestic that arch is. Next slide. Okay, so the Coldwater Bridge is an engineering marvel in terms of its size, scale, site-specific engineering, which incorporated a semicircular arch, a high arch, and a raised base to create a level roadway above a small ravine. The volume of the barrel is more than double that of any other stone arch bridge remaining today in Delaware Township. And the arch ring shows a distinction in workmanship. And so that's it.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? It is a lovely bridge. Nothing, I'll just scroll through and make sure.
Yeah, I have, oh, sorry, Janet,
go
can
ahead.
I go first?
Please.
A quick comment. So on section 7, page 4, the third bullet down at the bottom. This may be, I hope this is not a word choice. It may be the computer spelling doing a spelling a word you didn't want, but you definitely don't want dissembling in there to describe what you're doing or what they did to the previously added top of the wall. Like bullet 1, it should be disassembly, and leave dissembling to the politicians.
I had noted that as well, David, but even the bullet point prior to that, it's very I think you're missing some words. And I guess the real question is, you seem to be quoting from a SHPO review of this, which was legit. It already is on the register as part of another district, correct?
Right.
Right. So you're just incorporating it into the multiple property thing. Check your source, because that second bullet point actually makes no sense, and I think you dropped out part of it. But then I say, well, why do you even need to quote the SHPO report? Would it not be just, you can say it had a review in 2009, it had another review in 2016, and at the conclusion of which the State Historic Preservation Office agreed that the repairs were not intrusive for the bridge, rather than beginning to quote, certain things that they need to do. I just found that jarring and unnecessary. What do you think?
Stephanie actually added that at the end. Actually, I hadn't seen it until I saw the final.
I added it to be more specific about the changes that occurred after the period of significance.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's appropriate. I do think it's appropriate to have them there to understand what's going on, and to understand it's beyond the period of significance. And yeah, I think it's good. But I think they do make sense, Janet. I don't know what doesn't make sense about that. I mean, it's pretty clear to me what they did. That description is quite clear technically.
Okay.
So,
okay, I might not have read it right. I made a note, and this was a while ago when I read it, and said it felt to me like there were words missing. So I would just, anytime you quote a technical report, make sure all the words are there in the right order. But I concede to Stephanie and David. We'll leave it in. Fine.
Anything else from the board? Anything from the public? Comments or questions from the public?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Thanks. And I'm scrolling around and I don't see any little computer hands raised. In that case, do I hear a motion? David?
of course, with the changing of dissembling to disassembly, I recommend that we do what we need to do to get this on the register as part of this multiple property district.
Do I hear a second?
I second that this most majestic of bridges in Delaware Township, quoting Carla, be approved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you. Call the question.
David Abramson,
Yes.
Michael Strappa,
Yes.
Janet Foster,
Yes.
Kathleen John Alder,
Yes.
Gregory Latanzi,
Yes.
Kate Ogden,
Yes.
Anthony Piniello,
Yes.
Michael Siegel.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Here's my proposal. We have one nomination to get to, but it is an historic district, so it may take time. I'm not feeling that I need lunch, but could we have a short break? And if anybody needs to grab a snack bar, they can. and whatever other needs are met, can be met.
Sure,
If
when do we
anyone-
come back? When do you,
Sounds good.
at the time, when do we come
Uh,
back?
I have 12:06. That's awkward.
Can we come back at 12:30? I have something at 1:30, so hopefully we could do that do it in an hour. Or
Oh, we could come
doesn't
back,
that give you enough?
we could come back at 12:15, right, Kate?
I mean, that's fine with me too. Yeah. The less the better.
Yeah, let's say 12:15. That sounds good.
Beautiful.
Everybody okay? If you're late, I assume you're finishing your snack.
Bye.
So we'll leave it open, right, Janet? Not Janet, Andrea. We'll just leave Zoom open. Sorry,
Ah.
Teams.
Yes, you could just leave it open.
Oh, I'm hidden. Cool.
Janet, so how have you been?
Oh, I'm reasonably well, thank you. Thank
Good.
you. And you?
Yeah, not badly. My wife's still, it's a long recovery, and so, but we're going out to the Midwest for about 10 days, out to her sister and our brother-in-law, and around the lake in southwest corner of Michigan to for about 3 days. We love that area out there in Lake Michigan and across from Chicago.
Yeah,
So,
very across from Chicago and past Gary.
yes, well, yeah. Gary, well, Gary, you could see the Michael Jackson homestead. That's the
David, I got to jump in here. You know, David, I taught at Western Michigan University for 16 years.
oh, did you?
So I got all around, and because of the nature of the public history program that I ran, I got all around the state, but particularly the region you're talking about, from the Indiana border up to Grand
Yeah,
Rapids.
we vacation because I went to school in Illinois and lived in Chicago a little in the early 70s after that, and have a lot of friends there. And so we vacationed for 20 years down in New Buffalo or a Union Pier. Our
Yep.
friends are in Lakeside. And you know, I love it. The Red Arrow Highway, which goes all along the water there, is really has a reservoir of older and older feeling environments. You know, little pitch and putts and ice cream parlors, and yeah, it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
great, and the dunes for natural things. Yeah, that must have been
Those are
wonderful out there.
Those are fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you going up through New Buffalo and up through Benton Harbor, St. Joe, Benton Harbor, South Haven,
Yep.
going up to Saugatuck, Douglas. You know, the Art Institute of Chicago has that the Oxbow summer program there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Now,
which is really
one thing, not in Michigan, but heading from you know, New Buffalo and heading east into Indiana, you know, over uh, to see a touchdown Jesus at
South
you know,
Bend.
at Notre Dame at South Bend.
Yep.
But then they have the most amazing the Studebaker Museum. Did you ever visit that when you were there?
I did. Yeah, I had a former student work there as a curator. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's I visited when it was still in an old 4-story plant that then got demolished, but the county built them a new facility, and it's one of the most astounding museums. I know nothing about cars and less about Studebakers. It was just mesmerizing.
Yeah, when I was in college, I had a high school teacher that convinced I was always dying to go on the road, but he restored Studebakers, and it was in August of like 1978. We drove out to South Bend because there are so many Studebaker parts that are in that part of the world that he needed for his car.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
And they were still actually Studebaker had sold the rights to build. Remember the Avanti?
Yes, yes, yes.
They that car was still being manufactured in South Bend at the time, which would kind of look like a kind of a Corvette type of vehicle.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a car person, but I just wanted to go on the road and see the Midwest.
That's great. Yes. Yep.
That sounds great. You're
Madam
not a
Chair?
car person and you
I-
sat on the board all these years with Phil Holt. How could you be not a car person?
Madam Chair?
Yeah, I'm trying to find out how to get back in. I don't see a little rectangle that has my name on it so that I can turn the camera on for that.
But we can
We
see
see
you.
you.
We
You
We see you and
do?
hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Why don't I see me? Not that I really care, but
Look at the bottom bar of your thing and just press you might see the Teams icon and you might have to press it again. The bottom of the, I mean, now we're screen sharing, so we can't see anything, but if you weren't at the, because I had that earlier, I had to
you know
find
what?
my way back.
I'm fine. I don't really have to see me. Camera. Oh, no. Camera seems to be on.
You're doing fine. Just keep
I don't
going.
know. Usually I see me and it's sort of distracting, so this is probably better.
Okay.
Will we
Just turn
start?
turn it over to Kevin.
All right, should we get started, or is there
Yes.
some sort of
Andrea's back,
introduction?
right? Is Andrea back?
Yep. And Kevin
Okay.
McMahon will be presenting.
Yes.
Let's go right ahead. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. So I am Kevin McMahon. I am a senior associate at Powers and Company in Philadelphia. We are historic preservation consultants. We've been doing work in Trenton and throughout New Jersey for many years. So we're excited to move forward with a potential historic district here in downtown Trenton, which I think is long overdue. And with that, I think we'll get started. So just a quick overview here to orient everyone. This is the downtown Trenton Commercial Historic District. It's centered primarily along East State Street, between Montgomery Street on the east side and Warren Street on the west side, and also about 1.5 blocks on Broad Street from Hanover Street in the north, and extending a little bit, about a half block south of State Street. And also 2 blocks on the left side there along Warren Street, south of State Street. And there are about 88 resources, 70 of which are contributing. I think that was about around 80%, if my math is correct. And on this map here, the yellow shaded boxes are the contributing parcels and properties. Green is non-contributing, and some of those are vacant lots or surface parking lots. And then the red shaded squares are properties that have already been listed individually on the National Register. And one of those actually I did myself. I think that was last year or the year before. It's the number 52 on South Montgomery Street there. So we are arguing that the historic district merits listing in the National Register under criteria A and C. Under criterion A as a significant commercial center, one of the largest commercial centers in the state of New Jersey during the 19th and 20th centuries, and under criterion C for its important collection of commercial buildings that illustrate the evolution of this building type in the downtown area over a period of more than 150 years. And that's between 1815 to 1968, which is the period of significance. So just a quick overview of the early history. As most of you know, probably Trenton became the capital of New Jersey in 1790. It was an important stopping point on the route between Philadelphia and New York City, the two largest cities in the country at the time. But at that point, it was still only it was basically a village, and all of Trenton was the downtown area. There were a few hundred people living there, living and working in the same buildings usually. Buildings were spread pretty far apart. And commercial activity was fairly limited. We're talking about, some small shops, hotels, taverns, and those were primarily located on Warren Street. There were some early industrial sites, mainly ironworks and tanning yards on the outskirts of town, outside of, what is the downtown area today. But there was no significant manufacturing activity to speak of at the time. Starting in later in the 19th century, especially in the 1830s and extending into the 1850s, developments in transportation, especially the railroad, really started to transform downtown Trenton. The area became more urban and commercialized. Population increased from about 4,000 in 1830 to 17,000 in 1860. And with commercial growth, the downtown started to expand northward and eastward. So you start to see a lot of shops and other retail activity happening on State Streets, as well as Broad Street. So it was no longer confined primarily to Warren Street. And generally, there were more and a greater variety of shops, as I said, on East State and Broad Street. So there's a greater variety of retail establishments. And it was really during this period that Trenton's industrial activity in the industries of iron, pottery, and rubber, which the city became very well known for, started to coalesce and really expand rapidly. And that brought a lot of jobs and helped to spur the development and growth of the downtown. So it's really a story of continued growth after the Civil War. The population increases to about 57,000 by the 1890s. And further developments in transportation, particularly the horse-drawn streetcar, and those lines later became electric trolleys, that really started to concentrate commercial activity in the downtown. So many of the people who were still living downtown or immediately surrounding it were moving away to new residential neighborhoods outside of the downtown area. So that really started to concentrate commercial activity in the core and create almost an exclusively exclusively commercial district. It was during this period that buildings started to become a lot larger, department stores start to show up. But in general, I mean, there's just many, many more types of businesses of almost, virtually any kind, more than 200, in fact, in the downtown area. And it was around this time that downtown Trenton became really the most important commercial center between Philadelphia and New York City, or at least in New Jersey outside of the New York City metropolitan area. Starting in 1900s, again, just continues to grow. The downtown and the city as a whole continue to grow. The population increases to about 98,000 in 1910. And that finally made Trenton the fourth largest city in the state, surpassing Camden. There was sustained business growth in the downtown, especially in retail, but also an expansion of professional occupations that required offices. And that starts to create large office buildings for the first time. And, concurrent developments in building technology, particularly the steel frame, allowed buildings to get a lot taller. So this is the time when you start to see skyscrapers, high-rise buildings for the first time. And the growth of department stores was a major factor during this period. So in many cases, earlier department stores had located in existing buildings from the 19th century, but now they were building, their own purpose-built stores that were much larger. with shopping on several floors. And that was really one of the key things happening in the downtown during this period. So as the 20th century progressed, particularly after World War II, things really started to change. There was a brief surge in growth after World War II. There was a lot of optimism that with the end of the war, commercial expansion would just continue. Many stores modernized. You start to see national chains like Woolworths and Kresge's build large new stores in modern styles, one of which you see here is the Kresge store on State Street. But by the 1950s, things really started to change as suburbanization started to rapidly change cities across the country. A long period of decline set in the downtown, as it did in many places. And that was worsened by the loss of industrial jobs. So the city's population starts to fall. And there were a lot of vacancies by the 1960s, especially the 1970s. And actually, we chose 1968 as the end of the period of significance because that was really a pivotal moment following the riots that happened following the assassination of Martin Luther King. That really started to change things in the downtown, and vacancies got a lot worse because people just didn't want to go there anymore. There was an effort to revive the downtown, as many people know, during the 1970s with the Trenton Commons, which was a 2 or 3 block long pedestrian mall on State Street. A lot of cities tried this. Almost none of them succeeded, and here too, it was removed and restored to traffic by the 1990s. I forget what year exactly. So things have not really changed much since the 1990s. In recent years, there's been an effort to bring more residential, more living units back to the downtown, and there's a hope that that will start to spur a revitalization of business activity as well. So we'll see what happens there. And then in terms of architecture, as I mentioned, the district has a collection of buildings that from about every period in its history between 1815 and 1968 that illustrate the evolution of commercial building types and supporting institutional and religious building types throughout that period. Starting with the Federal style, which you find mainly on South Warren Street. The Golden Swan Inn is a really good example of that. That's one that is individually listed. Also on Warren Street, there's many examples of this where it's kind of like there's some Italianate influence, but it's still a little bit federal. They're 3 to 3.5 story brick buildings, fairly modest in their architectural decoration, but really good examples of what the early downtown looked like, especially before 1850. It was closer to mid-century, mid-19th century when you started to see more formal architectural styles. The earliest example of that is the Greek Revival style in the First Presbyterian Church on East State Street. And then around 1850 and into the Civil War period and a little after, you get much larger commercial buildings in the Italianate style, and a little later in the Second Empire style. The building on the right actually is the Old City Hall, which was built in 1837 in sort of federal, somewhat Greek Revival style, but completely rebuilt, or at least the facade was rebuilt in 1882 in the Second Empire style. So these are 2 very common building types from that period of really explosive growth in the late 19th century. And the larger buildings that I spoke of, starting in about 1900, you start to see much, much larger high-rise buildings for offices in more classically inspired styles like the Beaux-Arts and classical revival styles. And a little later on, starting in the 1920s, 1930s, more streamlined, geometrically simple Art Deco style. And there's several examples of that in the district. This is a really good one on Hanover Street, which is very intact. It's got great integrity. And then, of course, following the war, you start to see modernism come in. And there's some really good examples of that in the district as well. the largest of which is the New Jersey Department of Motor Vehicles building on South Montgomery Street. That's the one that we nominated individually a couple of years ago, but also in some of the retail buildings, the Kresge store and Woolworth store on East State Street, and one of my favorites in the lower right-hand corner here, the Hamilton Jewelers building on the corner of Broad and Hanover Streets. So I think that's the end of the presentation, but I think these examples really illustrate how well the district represents various styles in commercial architecture throughout that more than 150-year period, creating some really interesting and varied streetscapes that are fairly intact and have good integrity, and I think represent the commercial evolution of the district fairly well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can we exit the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Thanks. I really enjoyed this proposal. And I just have to say, you were just mentioning the Hamilton Jewelers store. You found a great advertisement for it. Figure 23 with the two hands holding it up.
That's a good one. Yeah, there's a lot of really good ads that feature images of the buildings in the district. So we were lucky to find some of those.
I enjoyed those. Thanks. Questions or comments from the board?
Yeah.
David?
I have some, I have a variety of small questions and comments, but I want to start by saying that I really, Kevin, I really appreciated this. I worked for the city of Trenton from 1975 to 78. I was the internal landmarks commission consultant and prepared their first landmarks guidelines back in the mid 70s. That was the heyday of preservation. We had bicentennial money more than we could accommodate. I had graduated from architecture school a while before and just had finished the Columbia program that year and was brought down to oversee anything old. And the planning department had an in-house architectural department at that time. John Clark, later of Clark, Hayton Hinz, was the director. Fred Travisano was the assistant director. Anyway, it was a wonderful time. Actually, that's when Terry invited me to be on the review board in 1976. So that was my introduction to this board. So I spent a lot of time there, and I read this with that eye, but also with the eye of my 20 years on the Newark Historic Preservation Commission, 9 as chair. And I read this to think about how we used the nominations or didn't use them to look at a proposed work. And I think this really very clearly and articulately, in almost all cases, describes the buildings, gives a good sense of what they are, what they're made of, what isn't original, all of which is important. So I really I commend that effort. It made a good read, and
thank you.
And as Kate already made an observation, that some of these figures are quite intriguing. The architectural sketches, which of course never can really be believed in terms of what actually got built,
right,
are always fun to look at. So having said that, I have a couple just quick questions. You don't even have to necessarily answer all of them. Maybe a couple comments here or there. On page 7.5, and I know this falls into Janet's bailiwick. You mentioned windows. This is for 17 West State Street, windows, and then call them metal. And I know that Janet must have that flagged on. So again, if you don't know the metal, you can say, we couldn't determine, but of course that always, for people like me, that always raises the question of, well, what the heck is the metal?
Sure. What was the address of that one?
That was 17 State Street.
Got it. Okay.
Building number 1. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I imagine they're steel, but yeah, I can certainly
I would
clarify that.
I would also. On building 28 on page 712, again, I'm not going to go through all of them, where the windows are covered, yet you say they're there. And so my question is, are they really? I mean, all we see is plywood. Again, I think the fact that almost every building has a photograph that's pretty usable is very good. But they're covered, so I just ask you, are they really there? If they are, then that's great. If you don't know, then I would say they're covered and we don't know.
Okay.
On page 718, there are 3 buildings, one a non-contributing one, but 45, 46, 47 that don't have photos associated with them. And I know we do get nominations for districts, and every building is not identified with a photo. But since you teased us with photos for virtually everything, come on, let's finish the job.
Yeah, we tried to limit the number of photos by doing more like streetscape shots rather than individual buildings. But
yeah, building 55 also doesn't have a photo in it. And speaking about photos, your photo location map on the south part of South Warren Street, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 photos are inaccurately listed. Your photos number 20 that you call 25, 26, 24, 28, 27, they're not correct.
Okay. Yeah, I think we did. I think we rearranged them at one point, so it may be an older.
For those of us who use that document and go back and forth with the text, it really was a problem. So anyway,
understood.
you'll fix that though. That's pretty straightforward. One of my questions has to do with the federal buildings. You talk about, I mean, first of all, you have some demarcations, 1820, 1840. So were you using Sanborns or something to date, and distinguish between the 20 years? What are you using to distinguish? And there's a reason I'm asking, because you also, for a number of these buildings, talk about original storefronts. Now, my own experience with federal buildings in Newark, very few of which exist, more in New York, is that federal buildings were built as residential buildings, and they, particularly in 1820, and they became commercial buildings as the city evolved. Commercial districts were established. So you specifically, for a number of them, let me see if I can find them. Building 73, Building 74, that's 109 South Warren, 111 South Warren. You say they're original. So my question to you is, why?
Sorry, you're referring for 73 and 74, you're referring to the storefronts, or?
You say there historically was a storefront in an 1820 building. That's 74, and the other one is 1840. I mean, my question is, why do you say there's a historical, that it was there? Unless you don't mean original. If you're using historical a little fuzzy here, then we need some clarification.
I can go through and make that distinction. I mean, certainly, like the Golden Swan Inn, for example, that is the earliest building, built in 1815 in the district. Always did have a tavern on the first floor, at least a portion of it did. So yeah, I mean, some of those probably were built as houses, and then later those first floors became retail spaces. But Yeah, I agree. I can probably make that clearer on a case-by-case
Okay.
basis.
Yeah,
But I mean, in
that-
terms of
that's sort
identifying the federal style, I think generally it's Flemish bond brickwork. Doesn't
Well, I
really.
don't have a question of the style. I mean, the two questions
Oh
I
yeah,
asked
because
were
you
one
asked like how was I
about
dating
1820
the
versus 1840. I mean,
right.
is there a Sanborn? Is there something that you used, or are you just saying
Mhm.
it looks a little older, it looks a little newer?
Well, I know for so there's a group of four of those 3-story. I think I'm calling them late federal, early Italianate. I forget what exactly I called them, but on the east side of Warren Street, that I know were built definitely around 1840 because I found some kind of ad or something referencing that they were being built by a particular builder in
Okay.
a local paper. So that's one way that I was making that
Fair
distinction
enough.
between 1820, 1840.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean that probably
right.
explains most of them.
Yep.
But yeah, certainly there were no.
That's
We don't have property atlases for that early, so it
fine.
usually is stuff that I find in newspapers.
Yep. Fine. Okay. That's it. I'm gonna leave it at that. I've got lots of things
Okay.
marked, but again, they're more for my interest and edification.
Sure.
Nothing earth shaking.
Okay.
And again, thanks for the effort. It was really
Yeah.
a very good read.
Thank you for the feedback.
Kathleen has had her hand up for a while. Kathleen?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, I really enjoyed this nomination a lot, but reading through it, you spent a lot of time showing the streetscapes, and I think that's an important aspect also of this district as well as the buildings. So speaking as a landscape architect, and I was just wondering, for example, are there or were there any beautification groups involved in the development of this streetscape over time? If so, are there any evidence of that, you know, women's groups or whatever? In terms, I was looking at the street trees, the lights, the signage. I mean, a lot of it looks contemporary, it looks like recent engineering, but for me, particularly since you put so much of your argument on the role of transportation and the change in this neighborhood over time.
Sure.
So I'm just asking you maybe to just go back and check or see if there's anything like that, because that would also tie that streetscape together and this as a unit. So that's my comment.
I can certainly look into that.
Janet, did you have your hand up earlier?
I didn't even get it up yet, but you're reading my mind. You know I
As
had something to say.
As I always do, yes.
And thank you, David, for your comments. Metal windows, that's a good one. I got that. My bailiwick apparently is to bitch about talk about materials. At the bottom of 7.3, you are summarizing the styles in the district, which is great. And, you know, this is typical of trends in the United States, and high quality materials like brick and limestone and terracotta and glass and stainless steel, and they remain intact. And particularly early 20th century works, which often include intricate hand carved limestone. And I'm not buying it. Cast stone, absolutely, but I would be and so through a number of your descriptions, I would just say double check anything, particularly from your 20s and 30s. If it is arguably like commercial districts everywhere else in the United States, and we're not sitting on top of Indiana limestone in Trenton, New Jersey, it's cast stone. Nothing wrong with that, but intricately carved, hand carved limestone, I don't believe it.
No, I believe the what is it called? The Farmers Mechanics Bank.
Maybe the bank. Maybe the bank.
Is definitely. I know for a fact that is limestone, but yeah, I can certainly go through and look a little more closely.
Some of the other commercial, the telephone building, the department stores. And I just think cast stone it's a legitimate material. It's very telling for that sort of 20s, 30s period. And there is a tendency to want to make it something different. So, well, you're right, Bob. I can't observe the non-members, but of course, it's cheaper than hand-carved limestone. It's a realistic option for a commercial building. So if other than that, I'm sorry we're not meeting in Trenton, so we can't all go out for a lunchtime walk. And because for as many times as I've been in Trenton, I haven't seen this. I'm overcome by the storefronts and the decrepitude at the first floor in many cases.
Yeah.
And this step back in your photographs are really helpful in seeing this in a new way. So thank you for that, Kevin.
Yeah.
And P.S.
Thank you.
Loved your nomination. Loved it for the motor vehicle building last year. That was
sure. Yeah.
That was revelatory as well. So I'm so glad that we're expanding. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Janet, I don't know if you ever use Google Street View, but I walked the perimeter of this in Google Street View.
Did you?
It was fun.
Okay.
I mean, it was fun, but it was also helpful. Let me say something sort of professional. It wasn't just fun.
Kevin, who sponsored the nomination?
Our client, Ajax Management, they do a lot of real estate development in Trenton.
Okay.
So they own a few buildings in the district, and they're looking to take advantage of historic tax credits.
Great. Okay.
Right.
Good motivation.
Good luck to them. Yeah.
Is there anything else from the board? Questions, comments? I'm not sure at this point whether we have anyone from the public with us. I think if there's a motion to be made, it probably needs to say something about emendations.
Bob has his hand raised.
We're used to seeing Bob, but he's a member of the public now. So
yes, please, Mr. Public Bob.
Thank you, Janet, for pointing that out.
Wait, you're also unverified, Bob. I'm seeing it says Bob Craig unverified.
I am
oh
Bob.
My God.
About 700.
So are you, David. You're unverified too, David.
Oh, I can't see my own sign. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
There's just so much urban history involved in this district. It's hard to know where to start. Kevin, thank you very much for doing this nomination, and I congratulate you on it, and I thank your client for hiring you to do it. And I also want to thank David for his observations about the history of historic preservation in 1970s Trenton and beyond. Trenton missed an opportunity in those years to put this district on the register back then. They did a lot of sort of loophole shopping around the register program. There was a time when you could get the use of the tax credit without putting properties on the register, and the city did that in the 70s. And so there were a lot of what were known as local certified districts in Trenton, more so than almost anywhere else, so that they could take advantage of the tax credit without getting all of the protections for those properties that registration would have provided. So if you can get this listed, that is immensely to your credit.
Absolutely. Thank you.
One of the things I didn't hear explicitly mentioned in your presentation was that Trenton developed a homegrown architectural community, and I thought that David might have mentioned this in his comments. But you know, there were between a dozen and 20 architects resident in Trenton by the end of the 19th century, and you know, such celebrity architects as Henry Finch and Thomas Slack and William A. Poland, whose biggest building you showed, the bank building. So I don't know if your nomination mentions that fact, but it was really quite a cluster of architects. It's noticeable in a noticeable cluster of architects in New Jersey in the 19th century. I pulled together at one point a directory of 19th century architects in New Jersey. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's if you're interested, I could make sure it's made available to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I didn't really go into the community of architects that existed there, but I certainly was impressed by how many.
For other projects you might do in the future, it might come in handy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, certainly I was impressed by how many of the buildings were designed by not just Trenton architects, but repeatedly using the same architects over and over. Seemed to be like some really good architectural talent there.
And
Many local.
When you get into the 20th century and the designs are evolving in a modern direction, that's also where you see the effect of the local architects on their impact on this district as you get into, and it's visually it's very dramatic between the architecture of the railroad era and the architecture of the automobile dominant era as embodied and exemplified by the DMV building that you showed.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's worth pointing out. I'll toot my own horn here a little bit with the First Presbyterian Church. Of course, it's already listed, but I made a discovery several years ago of the fire insurance survey of the First Presbyterian Church that was done in 1853, and it shows the building essentially in its original condition. And so I put the plan of the sanctuary of that building in an article that I wrote in Buildings and Landscapes last fall, but the actual survey includes much more information than what I illustrated in that article. The problem is you have to go to the Historical Society of Pennsylvania to get permission to use it.
I was going to ask if that's where it was. My office is actually right around the corner from there. So
Franklin Fire Collection.
Right. Yeah, I can at least put a citation in a footnote or something. In this nomination,
if warranted, I just wanted to mention. But the architect, I wanted to bring up the architect of that building was a New Haven architect named Henry Austin, and there is a collection of Henry Austin's papers up at Yale that relates to the later part of his career, but his couple of years in Trenton. The Connecticut people don't seem to know anything about his Trenton work, and the New Jersey people don't seem to know anything about his Connecticut work, and they're not talking to one another. So, anybody who's really interested in the career of Henry Austin, a significant architect and a disciple of Ithiel Town, New Haven. They need to bring together the two sort of phases of his couple years in Trenton, the First Presbyterian Church, and the other work he did at the same time. He designed a series of 10 cottages on East State Street called Cottage Row. And I'd love to know more about those cottages on Cottage Row, because it kind of expanded the fashionable residential area of Trenton to the east. So that's another thing. On South Warren Street, across from the Golden Swan, you have that block of buildings there, which somehow managed to escape the vengeful wrath of the urban renewal bulldozer people. And that originally was a row of buildings known as Wright's Row, WRIGHT, Wright's Row. And I believe a couple of the units of that row are relatively unaltered from their federal era form, if not appearance. And that might be noted. And one of them was significant for a while in the 1840s and early 1850s as the home of an early Black photographer, a daguerreotypist, whose name I believe was Augustus. And he was the subject of an exhibit at the Smithsonian about 20 years ago or so. Or Washington.
Justice Washington.
Washington, Justice
Okay.
Washington.
Great.
And he was the subject of a small exhibit at the Smithsonian about 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Bob,
Yeah.
I would just like to mention that it's almost 1. We have closing announcements. If there was anything else specific to this nomination, it's all interesting.
Just one real quick final thing that I'd like to take the opportunity to spread the word about engineering drawings of Trenton in this period, 1870s, 80s, 90s. I'm really hoping that someone will be able to someday check out the archive of the Van Note Harvey engineering firm in Princeton, because somehow they acquired the a large number of engineering drawings of Trenton engineer C.C. Haven from the 1870s, 80s, 90s. There's a lot of Trenton engineering stuff in their archives, at least there was when I was aware of it in the 1980s. I don't know if it's changed since then. But at least back then they had a lot of, and nobody has ever seen this material who has had a chance to use it. I had an inside contact spy in that operation back then who was feeding me this information, but no one seemed to have seen or used that material. And from what I was told, it was really excellent, fascinating stuff, and there was a lot of it. So a lot of Trenton's engineering, civil engineering from that period is, if it still survives, is hidden in that collection. That was my last item.
Thank you. I'm not sure I thank Kathleen, but I liked your comments as well. Anything else from the board? I don't think we have anyone from the public other than Bob.
Nothing in the comments.
Okay. Thanks. Excuse me. So do we have a motion?
Go ahead, Janet.
David's getting tired of it.
Okay, you want to be a second today? Okay, I would be happy.
No. Michael will continue to be.
Michael's going to do it. We got to take turns here. I would nominate the Trenton Historic District, Commercial Historic District, and accept it with the, I guess, the promise of proofreading for some of the questions that were raised about materials and storefronts. And otherwise, I guess we need a second.
I'll second the comments of my esteemed colleague.
Andrea, I guess you have the list or at least the recording of suggestions.
We do. Would you like me to go through them or?
I don't know. Do we need to?
I've written them down as well, so I've.
Kevin will
Okay.
read them, but.
Yeah.
I trust Kevin and Andrea.
All right.
So we have a motion and a second. Call the question, please.
David Abramson,
Yes.
Michael Charapa,
Yes.
Janet Foster,
Yes.
Kathleen John Alder,
Yes.
Gregory Latanzi,
Yes.
Kate Ogden,
Yes.
Anthony Piniello,
Yes.
Michael Siegel.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
job,
you for your,
Kevin.
All right,
for your hard work on that.
thanks.
We only have closing announcements from the HPO staff.
Sure. So the staff report was circulated in by email to the board ahead of the meeting. We note that we've added a 1 hourly assistant, Emily Gioberti. We gave a summary of the 2024 statewide History and Historic Preservation Conference, which had an amazing record-breaking 500 participants this year. So that's pretty incredible. We also highlight the office's involvement with NJDEP's Youth Inclusion Initiative. We also highlighted the sort of inaugural additions to the New Jersey Black Heritage Trail. Gave you an update on some efforts to recognize and potentially list some traditional cultural places. Highlighted the amount of work that the regulatory arm of the office is doing on offshore wind projects, and gave you a list of certified local government awards, grant awards that have been made this year. Highlighted recent listings of Wequahic in the National Register of Wequahic High School, the Bound Station Road Stone Arch Bridge in Delaware Township, and the Dempsey Pump House. And we also